Welcome back to another episode of the Meet Kevin Show. Today, we have the honor of confronting Ross Gerber on his thoughts on what's going on with the Federal Reserve, the economy, real estate, housing market, and of course, what's going on with paper handing Tesla. It's just 2 days away from Tesla Investor Day. We've got so much to talk about. Ross, welcome aboard. Thank you so much for being here. Introduce yourself to everyone, and then I got to ask you about the Fed.
Well, hello. Good to see you again, Kevin, and glad to catch you on a day off of flying and checking out real estate. I'm Ross Gerber, and I am the guest today on the Meet Kevin Show. And I'm an investor. I run the Gerber Kawasaki GK ETF, as well as our firm, Gerber Kawasaki, where we help people manage their financial plans, build their better financial futures, along with GK Tax and Accounting, our new very popular division, which has been swamped with people. We're doing tax and accounting. We're making tax and accounting fun and less stressful for people. So if you want to get your taxes done in an affordable and tech savvy way, GK Tax and Accounting is doing phenomenally well as well. So we manage lots of financial services businesses and help our clients reach their financial goals, lower their taxes, and ultimately, have a better life. That's what.
So I just be clear about that. So people can go to you, and you're a licensed financial advisor, and your team can help them do their taxes, their investing, whether they're investing into, like ETFs or bonds or whatever. And you can basically just manage it all for them.
Yeah. And I think the idea is that most people assume that the goal is to find the next Tesla, put money in it, get rich and retire. It's actually not that, because that's a lot more like gambling than actually investing. It's really about building a financial plan. That's what we really do at Gerber Kawasaki. The investment return portion is a big part of it too, but it doesn't matter if you don't have financial security, if you're not using your IRA and 401k right, and you're paying too much in taxes, if you're not taking advantage of tax advantages, for example, that ETFs have, there's just a ton of mutual funds paying distributions in a down year. So you end up paying taxes and lost money. It can only happen in a mutual fund, doesn't happen in ETFs. So it's there's many ways that you can manage your finances to get better rates of return that have nothing to do with investing, like paying less taxes gets you a higher rate of return. Avoiding a lot of turnover and costs with investing saves you money, gives you better rates of return. And so we really help people plan for their future. For example, planning for college, you have some young kids, and when you start thinking about college costing $600,000 per kid, and it's there's a savings plan for this that's very effective, the 529 plan. Are you taking advantage of this? So we sit down with people and we really help map out a strategy to reach your goals, and then a savings plan to help you reach your longer term financial goals. And it can be helping you buy your primary residence, buy your first home. It can be helping you with your trust and estate, helping you with your parents, with older parents. It's super hard, and making sure they're taken care of and their estate's taken care of. So there's a lot to financial planning and investing, and that's what we do at Gerber Kawasaki. And I think it's what we do that's unique is that we work with people at all stages of the wealth accumulation process. Most firms like mine only work with you once you're rich and you're older, and they're like, oh, now that you have 5 million, come work with us. What we do at Gerber Kawasaki is we'll start with you when you're 23 and you have your first job, and we'll make sure you're saving in the right place in your 401k, in your IRA, make sure that you're making great career decisions and investments in yourself, especially when you're young. But we have a Get Invested program for new investors, all the way to wealth building, which is for young people who have some money, who are now starting to really accumulate assets. And then we have wealth management for people who now have some assets, maybe like Gen X, people like my age. And then we have high net worth for people who are now older, who or business owners who have maybe sold their business, who now have 5 million or above. So we have a plan for those people too. But our firm helps you in all stages, and that's, I think, what makes us unique.
So what I've done is I've gone ahead and linked that down below, and I have to know, because it sounds like while you help people come up with financial plans, it seems like the Fed has their own plan. What's going on? Are they trying to ruin this market and then just buy the dip themselves? Or what are they doing? Are we going to 6%? Are they lying to us and just feeding it to us really slowly, like boiling the frog? Are we going to 7%? What's going on here?
Well, the boiling the frog, it kind of feels like what they're doing. No, I don't think the Fed knows what they're doing. And so they keep moving the goalposts as they're wrong constantly. So what they thought a year ago what inflation was going to be, they've been wrong. What they thought 6 months ago would have been enough, they've been wrong. And not to say that their job is easy. Like, we can't really predict the future very easily, or nobody really can. But I think it's the idea of what caused inflation. Okay. What are the causes of it? Are those things still happening? And is raising interest rates the appropriate solution for resolving the problems with inflation? Because raising interest rates is only one tool in the overall economy. And when you look at where that tool works, it only works in a section of the economy. And we're seeing the limitations of this tool now, because what they've really done is they've made it more expensive to buy a car or to buy a house or for a business to finance. If you're a small business owner, you're screwed right now, okay, because you can't get a loan from a bank for less than 10%. So who are they slowing the economy, right? And it's basically they're slowing the economy on people who it really doesn't affect the economy as much. Now, people still want to buy a house and they're still buying houses. Home sales are at lows, but we haven't seen a huge decrease in pricing yet because there's so little supply of houses. So raising interest rates just slows down how many sales there are. Okay, fine. But people still need to buy houses. And so it just makes it harder for people. Their cost of living goes up. They can't afford to buy the house, right? So they don't buy the house. And then real estate starts to go down. But it doesn't change if I go to a restaurant and there's servers who need to be hired to work there. And those servers were making $12 an hour. And now they're making $14 an hour, which still is not a lot of money. But this is good to see people who make $12 an hour, like at Home Depot, got a raise to $14 an hour. This is great news. And the Fed should not be worried about this at all. This is good. You want an economy that brings everybody up. And we finally have an economy where people who are in lower income jobs are making more money. And Jay Powell's like, we can't have that. We can't have that at all. So 60%.
Yeah, why do you think that is? I mean, it seems like there's this fear of this wage price spiral that, if people get paid more, they're going to, essentially have more money to spend, which will lead companies that realize they have higher costs to raise prices. But it also seems like, if the median wage in the United States is $32 an hour, right now it seems like most of the people actually getting paid more are the ones making 12, 14, 18, 20 bucks an hour. Shouldn't that really just be bringing down the average wage anyway? I mean, the tech ones, the wealthier ones, they're the ones who seem to be getting laid off. What's the Fed worried about? Let poor people make some more money, man.
Right. But you're talking about there's like millions of people who make $12, $13, $15 an hour, and there's a lot less people who make $250,000 and lose their job and can get another job for $200,000. You know what I'm saying? So we're seeing all the layoffs and a lot of job loss among middle and high income workers in certain industries. But among the healthcare industry, hospitality, restaurants, the core services, most of these people have been underpaid for a generation, and now for the first time, it's like we can actually have real wage gains if I work at Walmart, real wage gains if I work at Home Depot or McDonald's. And it's a really positive thing for the economy to have this, because it brings up everybody. And then these people spend more money. And it doesn't mean that prices for goods has to go up that much. It doesn't mean this at all. So the inference that the price of eggs has anything to do with whether somebody at Walmart gets a raise, there is no correlation, because the egg prices have gone up because of the avian flu, not because of demand for eggs is off the charts. Like somebody in my office was like, I went to Costco and food inflation is real, and I was like, yeah, food got more expensive. Ukraine was one of the biggest producers of food in the world. And when the war started, it cut off a huge supply of food for the world, and it's made food more expensive. But the Fed has nothing to do with that. That's the war. If you want food prices to go down, end the war. It's really simple. So if we send Ukraine a bunch of tanks and we just kick the hell out of Russia right now, the sooner food prices will come down. It has nothing to do with Jay Powell. Okay, there's nothing he can do. Okay, so a war breaks out and oil prices surge. Okay, And look at what happened. All the economies in the world adjusted, and there was enough oil and gas, it turned out, that we don't need Russian oil and gas. Europe actually now has plenty of oil and gas. Prices have dropped in oil and gas. And it turns out we don't need Russian oil and gas that bad. But Jay Powell had nothing to do with that. That's the world economy is making adjustments to a spike in energy price, which created a huge profit for you know who? U.S. oil companies. So U.S. oil companies had record profits, like ridiculous levels of profits. Why? Because of the war in Ukraine. Jay Powell has nothing to do with this. So here's Jay Powell in the corner with his little hammer trying to slow down inflation that he has no control over by jacking up rates on everybody. Okay. And basically like screwing the stock market, screwing small businesses, screwing homeowners, you know, anybody who borrows essentially gets screwed, which is most people. But he's raising the cost on us to offset the fact that eggs cost more because a lot of chickens are dying. Okay. It doesn't make any sense. So what the Fed needs to do is stop raising rates and let the economy work, because in a real competitive economy, prices go down naturally because companies compete to have the lowest prices, like Tesla. They lower their price so that their competitors are now like, oh, great, you can buy a Tesla for a really good price right now. And what do you think people went out and did? They went out and bought Teslas. But prices went down for cars over the last year. Prices for houses are going down. Prices on rent going down over the last year. So we're seeing all these prices receding because of the Fed anyways. So the Fed got what they wanted, but it's never good enough. It's just never good enough. Why? Because people's earnings are still too good. So their solution is, how do we get more people fired? How do we hurt the U.S. economy so that, you know, Mary, who works at Kentucky Fried Chicken, won't ask for a raise, you know?
Do you think that the Fed's going to keep hiking until the unemployment rate reaches a certain level, like 6%, 5, 7%?
Well, they have, see, they use these terminologies so they don't just say until we get enough poor people fired so that they have no wage power, that we're just going to keep raising rates. But see, it doesn't change underlying demand for Kentucky Fried Chicken. You know, so we still need Mary working at Kentucky Fried Chicken, and we still got to pay her what people are getting paid because we need her. And there's a lack of people still in the employment arena. And there's a very specific reason for that. And it's called horrible immigration policies. So in America, we used to have lots of immigrants that would take these jobs. It was very easy to find somebody to work at Kentucky Fried Chicken 5 years ago, you know, before Trump. There was plenty of immigration before Trump. Now, Biden's been no better. So I'm not saying this on a partisan level. The immigration policies in this country under Trump and Biden have been equally as horrible. Yeah. But what we've done is we've cut millions of people out of potential jobs that could have filled these jobs and lowered wage pressure. So wage pressure can be lowered extremely easily by simply letting in 1 million people into this country, and they'll pay taxes. And they're coming from countries all over the world, and they can go work in Kentucky Fried Chicken. And then Mary won't have as much power saying, I need a $2 raise for me to work, because there's some other guy that will take the job for the same amount of money that she's getting paid.
So is that fair, though, then, to Americans that, you know, they should earn less or have less jobs for immigrants coming over? I mean, it sounds like it's good for inflation if we have immigration. I'm an immigrant, so I mean, generally, I'm a big fan of bringing more people over who are willing to work and not just come to be on welfare. But that's something people ask.
Immigrants. Our system is immigration. The only people that were here were Native Americans. Okay, in 1600, they were immigrants that came from England or wherever, and they landed. Remember Thanksgiving, when the Native Americans thought we would be nice, and they welcomed us and showed us how to make food because we were scared to get off the boats because we were dying? Well, that was a mistake, wasn't it? They should have just said no thank you. But instead, so our country's the country of immigrants. That's what the Statue of Liberty actually says. Bring us your tired and you're hungry and you're messed up people. So my relatives came over, 100 years ago from Ukraine, from the same Russians trying to kill us, and we left, and we came over 100 years ago. It's amazing. We come to America, we get jobs, we pay taxes, and we build families. And that's what this country is all about. So to say now that I'm in America, I don't want any more immigrants coming in so I can protect my job and my wages is un-American.
That's a really good point. It kind of makes sense if you go back and look at history. It's like, and then even, us basically historically here, it's like, hey, look, we're all immigrants. Okay, so what's your take then on some of basically the corporate stimulus we're seeing now going into the energy sector, whether that's like chargers for EVs or
Right.
chips getting massive stimulus? I mean, it seems like on one hand, the Fed is struggling to try to control inflation, and we're having these debates over labor and wage price spirals. Yet now here you've got essentially the government still printing money, except now instead of sending stimulus checks to people, they're sending them to, green climate change policies, which, in the long run are probably great, but in the short term, aren't they adding fuel to the fire?
Kevin, you're 100% on this. Who's causing inflation? The government causes inflation. Okay. It's not that complicated. You hit it right on the nose. Okay. So, Jay Powell, you got to lose your job at Kentucky Fried Chicken because the government keeps printing money, whether they give it directly to people or they give it to a company or whether they give it in an incentive. The issue is they're printing money we don't have. That's what inflation is. It's too many dollars chasing the same goods or too few goods. Okay. So think about how we got this inflation. It was 2021. Biden comes into office. He passes a $1.9 trillion stimulus bill when there was no need. So when you looked at the deficit, so one way to look about inflation is the way I look about inflation. Inflation is the amount of extra money we print every year than what we had the year before. So currently we have $32 trillion of debt, okay, that our country has. And we run a deficit, let's say for round numbers, over the last 12 months, it's $1 trillion deficit. Okay. It's been as high as $2 trillion under Trump. But $1 trillion deficit on $32 trillion of debt means we add another trillion. So we'll have a $33 trillion debt in a year. So 1 trillion on 30 trillion implies like a 3% increase, okay, in the debt. That's the inflation rate, how much more money has been printed. Now, where that extra printed money goes varies, right? It can go to entitlements like Social Security, it can go to the military, it can go to the IRA, it can go to Tesla through $7,500. How many $7,500 checks are they writing right now for people buying Teslas? Now, you can argue, this is good, this is bad, but Tesla is subsidized by the U.S. government. There's no question about it, along with all the EV players, solar players. And I think that's a great thing. It's a great, wonderful idea, except that they're running it with deficits. Okay. So if the government has $2 trillion of deficits, then our inflation rate's like over 6%. You see what I'm saying? So if you go back to COVID, we printed trillions of dollars, over 10, 15% more money than we had over a couple of years. And now that showed up in the numbers once people were able to go spend that money. But when we were locked up, people just saved it all. So you were like, the economy wasn't overheating when we were all locked in jail. But once we got free, everybody had all this 10, 15% more money and they started spending it. And we got 10 to 15% more inflation. And that's where we're at right now. Okay. So we got the inflation that we printed. So now if you want to beat inflation, I can tell you how to beat inflation right now. Cut the deficit. Cut the deficit. So if the government had zero deficit this year, we would have no inflation. But what would happen? They would have to take $1 trillion out of the economy that they're spending, right? That of money they don't have. And that would slow the economy for sure, right? In a way that the Fed can't. Okay.
I would imagine that would be pretty politically unpopular. It might solve inflation, but then you get...
Who are they going to cut? Who gets cut? $1 trillion got to get cut. Who are you going to cut? So you only have 3 sections of the government. You got military defense. That's not going to get cut. We're in a war. Okay. We're not cutting military defense. Then you've got entitlements, which is Medicare and Social Security. And that's what the Republicans are talking about. And that's actually kind of a smart thing to talk about because we can't afford it. But when everybody in the government's old, they don't have any desire to take anything away from old people, even if it benefits young people. So if you notice Biden, who's 80, if you say, I'm going to cut Social Security to save money. He attacks full-fledged because he knows that old people control the polls. When you go to a polling station, go to vote, who's controlling the polls? It's old people. Old people control our country. Look at our Congress. Our Congress is like 100 years old. Dianne Feinstein, 127 years old, finally decided not to run. 127. So
she tried to walk. Oh, sorry.
I know. They were like, she like blinked twice when they knew she didn't want to run anymore. But like, I'm joking, but like, it's true. And so like, nobody wants to cut Social Security. The simplest way we can save our country right now is say, sorry, old people, you can't collect Social Security till you're 70. Now,
wow.
For me, my Social Security age is 70. Okay. Because it moves up over the next decade from 67 to 70. So when I reach full retirement age, it's when I'm 70. But if you're old today, you can reach retirement age at 67. So why not just change it to 70 right now? Life expectancy is not going up anymore. So who cares? Okay. So
now, it doesn't seem like, though, that even if that would be a solution, that it would happen. So do you think there's a risk we might not extend the debt ceiling, which could be politically calamitous and financially calamitous?
This is like, this debt ceiling thing is the dumbest thing ever. Okay. Well, think about it. It's like saying like, we owe the world $30 trillion and we're going to borrow another trillion every year for as long as we can imagine, but we might not pay it. Now, this is a really bad idea for a country that's borrowed $30 trillion since the Vietnam War. In my lifetime, basically. There was no debt in 1967. Okay? There was no government debt in 1967. It started in the late 60s under Nixon. We got off the gold standard because we couldn't pay our bills for Vietnam, and he printed tons of money, and we had horrible inflation. That was the 70s. Okay? And from that period of time, we've racked up $30 trillion in debt. And now they're saying, because of some political jockeying, oh, we might not pay it. It's absurd. It's absurd. It's stupid for both sides. Now, what the Republicans are saying, which I think is wise, is that, Democrats got to cut back on spending. So let's talk about spending, and we'll do this. So they're using the only leverage they have to try to get Biden to talk about spending. But that's not a bad thing. We've got to cut spending somewhere. We can't continue to spend trillions of dollars more than we make every year. It doesn't work. So when you're talking about inflation, the best way we can cut inflation is by have the government spend less. And if the government spends less and we raise the debt ceiling, that will help with inflation substantially. That's the solution. It has nothing to do with what. So Powell could stop now. Powell could stop at 5%. Powell can try to force the entire housing market into a massive decline, huge imbalances in the economy, and huge debts that the U.S. can't pay. Because nobody's talking about the fact that the U.S. can't afford 5% interest on $30 trillion. Does anybody think about this? That's $1.5 trillion in interest a year. We're paying $350 billion currently. Biden's budget factors in like $400 billion for interest this year. And I'm like, what fantasy is he living on? With rates at 5%, every month that goes by, more of our debt refinances from 0% to 5% every month that goes by. And it's burdening us to pay this interest into the future, which causes even bigger deficits. And then you get this debt cycle of bigger and bigger deficits, higher rates because nobody will lend us money. Oh my God. What is the Fed doing?
So how do you align this as an investor? So obviously, your point of view is the Feds should stop as soon as possible with raising rates, because not only is it making it more expensive for us, but it's not actually helping with inflation. Yeah. What would help with inflation would be if the government just stopped spending money ridiculously. So how does an investor position themselves right now? I mean, what do you do? Do you just, sit in cash? You just buy T-bills? What do you do?
Sitting in cash, just get 5%. You get 5%. So if the basic premise that inflation should average 2 to 3% over the long term, and the government guaranteed will just give me 5%, what do I need to do anything for, right? Just let the government pay me. Isn't that what we do at House Hack? We just let the government pay us. Bonds mature. Every month they mature, and I buy them at even higher rates than we bought the first group. I never thought at 4.5%. Now I bought the recent ones I just bought were at 5. I got us 5% on the last bunch. So
Nice.
every time they mature, we get 5%. So think about that. You have $20 million at 5%, makes you $1 million a year. Why do I need to work? Why do I need to try? Let the Fed pay me. So a lot of the money that we have right now is going into bonds and going into short-term treasury bonds, because even corporate bonds are yielding the same. So it's really weird, because basically like corporations and other debt, unless it's risky, basically now trades the same as governments, because everybody knows over the long term the Fed can't keep up these rates this high. But like on the short term, people still know like Disney's in good shape and Apple's in good shape. So like, why should they be paying 8%? And they're not. So they've created this weird thing where it's even more advantageous to buy government securities than corporate securities because the spread's so low.
Right.
Looking at high yields, maybe they pay 8. And unless you take like real risk, it's just the risk reward isn't there. So I just buy treasuries. So why would I buy a stock? Well, look at it this way. When interest rates change and go back down, there's going to be so much money that will be looking for a home, and it will end up in equities one day. So like if you think about the pent up demand for equities, and now people are getting 5% on money that should be going into equities and creating jobs and innovation, and instead it's sitting in the government. When rates go back down, all that money flows back into the stock market. Okay. So it's like this big tsunami of cash that's happy hiding because the Fed is overpaying you not to take risk. So the Fed, you can see it, like when rates go up, stocks just kind of go down. It's just like, that's just the relationship, because it's a PE to interest rate relationship. So the higher rates go, the lower PE goes. But if you look at earnings, they're not looking so great, right? Earnings were down like 5% in Q1, and that ultimately drives stock prices, is earnings. So we've got to get earnings going back up if we really want the stock market to go back up, because it is trading at 18 times earnings, which is where it should be. So how does stock earnings go back up? That's the question.
What do you think the weakest sectors are, or maybe not just the weakest ones, but maybe the best? What are going to be the most resilient over this next year if we are going to see that earnings recession, so to speak?
Well, it's interesting too, because remember, we have a really lopsided economy where companies like Amazon are so massive relating to every other retailer involved that if Amazon has a bad quarter, it makes it look like everybody in retailing has had a bad quarter, because their weighting on earnings is so high, like Apple, Google. So what I think we're seeing is the beginning of this massive shift away from big cap tech into small mid-sized company, because big cap tech, Microsoft and Apple discluded in this discussion to some degree, especially Microsoft, which is doing a lot of great things. But like, they can only make money if they cut employees. So what we're going to see is this continuing layoff cycle in the tech sector. So like, it's way over bloated, the whole tech sector. So during COVID, they did really well, and everybody bought PCs, and right now everybody's still happy with their PCs and whatever, so they haven't bought new PCs. And because of that, it's put pressure on the entire tech industry, right? So it was great during COVID. Now it's post-COVID, everybody's going to Vegas. So it's like, it's not that iPads are all of a sudden going to be bad, but it's like my need to replace the iPad might be a year or two away, you know? And so for these companies to make more money, they just need to get lean and start demanding results and innovation from their people. And we're starting to see that across the whole tech industry. So it's going to be harder for Salesforce to make money. It's going to be harder for all these big cap techs to make money, because they're going to have to lay off people and get competitive again. Okay. And then you look at the small and mid cap companies that are scrappy and growing and doing all kinds of stuff. And also in real life companies, I call companies where you actually physically do stuff, like the casinos that we're invested in, you know, like solar, you know, where people are putting solar on houses. The numbers are good. You know, these are growing businesses with growing earnings, you know, and you see it in the earnings report. Some companies are reporting great earnings, no issues. And a lot of the companies are not. But when you look at who's not, they're typically the big cap, you know, the Boeings, you know, even Berkshire had lower earnings, you know. So you're just seeing, I think I think it's a great time for small and mid-sized companies to take share against the big cap competitors.
So, would you say then that the bear fears of, hey, look, we're going to go through this earnings recession is maybe more of a just pick where you want to be, or would you side a little bit, I mean, how would you compare yourself to those bears that are saying just get out completely and just let the cards fall where they may and then get back in?
Well, if you read Warren Buffett's letter, which I do every year, he's been investing now 80 years. And he's like, it's a third of the amount of time America's been alive. And it's never been a good time to bet against America. Okay. It's simple as that. Nobody can predict the future. I can't tell you what's going to happen this year. Obviously, I wish I could, but I have no idea. I don't know if the war is going to end or not. I don't know if the Fed's going to just keep raising interest rates until somebody finally tells them to stop. I don't know. And that's not what we do. What Warren Buffett does and what we do is very similar. Is we're trying to invest in great businesses. If we invest in a great business over time and we buy it at the right price, it works out pretty well. So I think the question is does it make sense valuation wise to invest in securities? And that's where it gets interesting, because valuations aren't that high. Valuations are pretty low and expectations are low. So the question is, companies like MP that beat earnings by a ton. We own this. It's a rare earth company. We own it in the ETF. And they, like, earnings estimates were just wrong by like a substantial amount. The stock starts rallying because basically earnings estimates were just wrong by a substantial amount. And they just made more money than what people thought. So I think when you have low expectations and low PEs, there's more opportunity for upside surprise. So that's good about the market right now. The market is not exuberant. Okay. The market is quite, I think, sad, so it's like low valuations, low expectations. Nobody expects earnings growth. So the question is, what companies are going to surprise? Like who's going to do really well? And I think if you look at where the money's being spent, it's people want to go out, they're traveling, it's entertainment, airlines are doing well, hotels, gaming, movies, people are back in the theaters. People are going to Disneyland. People are going to restaurants. I think. Is
it too early for chips, you think?
No. In fact, I was just looking at your fund and you own a bunch of the same stocks we own. The chip business is a great business to be in because it's being subsidized right now. And if you look at what Intel said, is basically we're cutting our dividend because it's so high and we need to invest in our business if we're going to grow. And there's this opportunity because if we build factories, the government's going to give us money. So we're going to cut our dividend. We're going to put it into growth. And what did Intel do? They bought 5% of ASML. Intel owns 5% of ASML. And I was like, that's so smart because they're going to spend $100 billion on building stuff. And who do you think supplies them with the most advanced? And I saw that was added to your portfolio. And it's been in my portfolio. And I'm like, dude, how does ASML lose? Great management, great business, so on and so forth. And so it's like, when you start thinking about like this CHIP Act is going to create a huge amount of profits. Now, we also own in the ETF on semiconductor, and NVIDIA is a top holding and always has been. And I think you own AMD, which is also a very good company. And so
I'll have to just copy you on and put that one in too.
Well, it's a good stock.
I'm kidding. Okay, I'm not going to copy you.
No, it's okay. We own similar stocks. It's not a bad thing. That's it. We call it like confirmation bias. We feel better if we own the same stocks, and then we can both be wrong together. Except you own like very few stocks, so it's a little bit more volatile.
I'll be really wrong or really right.
Yeah, good and bad. We have to own more stocks because we got to smooth out the path a bit. And, but that said, I think chips are in a wonderful position to be in globally, and we've had chip shortages, remember, for a long time. So, like On Semiconductor is very involved with the electric vehicle business, charging business. They make chips that are very good with high energy use. And like, if you look at their business, it's like kind of perfect for exactly what's happening in the world right now with electrification, and chips drive everything. like AI has been the big talk lately, and NVIDIA has always been, ahead in AI. But it's not just AI, that they're really good at. It's gaming, crypto, autonomous driving, for example. And so like the core of all future everything is in chips. And we're trying to bring the supply chain home, and we're trying to, not let China dominate these crucial industries any longer. So that's wonderful for chip companies and suppliers, but bad for inflation.
Now,
So,
would you say that since we're talking about electrification, do you think people are finally getting over range anxiety? And I'm asking that because anecdotally, someone in my family just bought a Toyota RAV4 for $68,000. And I'm like, well, first of all, you missed out. It should have been 69. But okay, that aside, why would they spend $68,000 on a RAV4 when they could have gotten a Model Y for like $54,000 and a $7,500 tax credit? And their answer is twofold. One, well, they don't like Elon. And number two, range anxiety. And I'm like, come on, man, this like, I did not know this was still a thing. What are you seeing out there?
So you recognize the don't like Elon as a real thing, because we hear it all the time now from clients.
Oh gosh, especially if they watch CNN. So I'm sorry. No,
I mean, I'm just saying, like, people at Tesla and Elon insist that this isn't happening, but unfortunately, a lot of people don't like him. And
it is. People are vehemently angry at Elon, and it's crazy. In fact, the same person.
And I'm
even
like,
though, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, even though, Elon has been investing in Fremont, and it's the most productive automotive factory in North America, you've got plenty of engineers up in NorCal. This announcement about an engineering HQ of 1,400 jobs in NorCal the other day with Gavin Newsom and Elon Musk led that same person to say, oh, well, sounds like Elon's got to go back to California. Messed up going to Texas, huh? Like, come on, man.
That, but I think they recognize if they want to find real engineering talent, they need to be in California for sure.
Right, exactly. But I guess more broadly, that sentiment. Like, why is there so much jaded sort of anger towards Elon? Is it really just because of Twitter, or what is it?
This weekend could infuriate anybody. I see. This was kind of, now you're getting into the whole Tesla thing. This was kind of my thing. It's like, okay, well, we sell electric vehicles. So the guy who goes to space and wants to save the environment, what are you going to say? You don't like this guy? All he wants to do is go to space and, save the environment. You can't not like Elon, right? But then he buys Twitter, right? Okay, he buys Twitter. Okay, he fires everybody. Okay, that didn't go over very well. Okay, we can all live, because I don't think anybody misses the Twitter people that bad. All right, fine. We can go through that. Sorry to my friends who were fired. I do love you guys. But then it's like, I'm going to tweet about all these political things. Now, I've done this on your show before, where we talk about politics and everybody hates me when we talk about politics, because it's like, half people agree and half people don't agree if you talk about politics. So if I say what I think about DeSantis, there's going to be a lot of people who comment that they hate Ross and they don't want him on the show anymore. So it's just,
now I got to know.
Come on, dude. DeSantis is a disaster. I mean, he's a disaster. So, don't worry. The Democrats are just as bad on the other side. So you can say what you want to say. I'm an independent. Although there was
right.
I am. I was a Democrat my whole life. And
did you switch?
the way I feel as a business owner and as somebody who works really hard to create jobs and pay people and benefits, that the demonization of success from the Democrats is a crime. Like,
wow,
our society needs entrepreneurs like you. Okay. Young people who want to build businesses and create jobs. You pump tons of money into the economy. Like, without small business owners, there is no America. Okay. So when people are successful, they make money. Okay. It's not a bad thing. Like, I have clients who are from every background and every kind of career, and many of them have been very successful in their industries from hard work, like hard work. And then to demonize them because they have millions of dollars and saying they don't pay their share, when we're paying 55% of our income plus another 10% when we buy something. So 65% of my income goes to the taxpayers. 65% of my income. Okay. 55% in regular taxes, 10% on sales taxes when I buy anything. Okay. I don't want to be called not paying my fair share. It's bull. Okay. A lot of wealthy people pay more than their fair share. Some do not, for sure. And there's lots of abuse. But just the same, you cannot demonize success. Like, this is America. It's a capitalist society, and we want to encourage young people to go out and start businesses and take risks and be successful and become multimillionaires if they work really hard. Some do it by the time they're 30. Okay.
Do you think the Democratic Party then has really ruined their messaging here in the last couple of years even?
Yeah, it started with this, and it's gotten worse with the woke movement. So on the right, we have the extremist anti-Semitism and racism. And on the left, now we have this extremist wokeism where almost anything you can say or do is wrong, and it hurts the cause of liberalism, because I'm a liberal by nature, but forcing everybody to have all these pronouns is not necessarily the solution for liberalism and for acceptance of people. I think I believe very strongly in respecting people's differences. Like, people are different. Some people are weird, whatever you want to call it. And we should respect people for who they are. But then it gets to this other extreme where I've got to have like a separate bathroom for everybody in the world. It's like, it gets ridiculous. It's just like pee or don't pee, like, I don't know. I don't even think they should have genders on bathrooms anymore. Like, does it really matter? Like, just go in the bathroom and pee. I don't know. It's gotten ridiculous. So I don't want to go into politics too much because it's a lose-lose conversation, but I think both parties have gotten extreme, and it's not to the benefit of America. And I'd love to see both parties run candidates that aren't extremists or 80 years old. So I think it would benefit America if there are people running who are not extremists and who are not 80 years old on both sides.
Do you think the reason we see so much extremism and even why you see so much potentially divisiveness when Elon Musk has a comment is because the divisive stuff is what ends up becoming popular on social media, whereas the neutral stuff isn't that popular?
When has anybody talked about Dilbert? People haven't talked about Dilbert in 30 years, but he goes on a racist rant, and Dilbert will sell more Dilbert dolls and costumes and whatever to the right than they've ever sold. And he gets banned from all his newspapers after 30 years that they didn't know he was a racist. But it's like the media and social media loves these extremist things that they can talk about. Nobody wants, boring headlines, right? So Dilbert goes on a racist rant is like a great headline, and they run with it, and everybody talks about it. So this is Elon's problem, is he chimes in and comments on a bunch of issues that are complex. Oftentimes his view of those issues may or may not be accurate to a lot of people, and then they basically don't like him. So how does that sell electric vehicles? And that's the problem. That's the problem. And that's why I say owning Twitter is a fundamental conflict of interest with Tesla, because Tesla sells electric vehicles and storage of energy to basically people in California, the biggest market for Tesla. And then he goes out every week and says things that don't sell EVs. Sells Twitter looks, views, but doesn't sell EVs. And that's one of the main issues that Tesla faces now, because it seems like it's sad that they have to cut prices so much to sell cars. And part of that is, whether they like it or not, the optics around politics and all this kind of issues. And I think if they were advertising and if they were minimizing the effect of all this politics on their sales, they wouldn't have had to cut prices by so much.
Now, you tried running for the board. Tell me about that, because it sounds like you wanted to give that sort of reasonable maybe advice to Martin and Elon Musk and the team.
It's not just the advice, because I think Tesla's really open to a lot of stuff whether Elon likes it or not. So like Tesla,
Mhm.
the company, is a little bit different than Elon's Tesla in that, you know what, and I'll see more of it this week. The team at Tesla works so hard. They're such motivated, dedicated people, and they're asked to do so much, so difficult, the tasks. And Elon is quite the extremist in his goals. And so people who work at Tesla, try really hard, but I always think that it's always like they're undermanned, undergunned. It always feels like that. And that's how it always feels with the media. And now I think it was quietly admitted that they stopped selling full self-driving today. And so new Tesla buyers cannot get full self-driving today because of the NHTSB recall. Those fixes have not been put in place. And it seems as if Tesla's voluntarily agreed to stop selling full self-driving in the meantime. Now, I haven't gone on the website and verified all this kind of stuff, and I'll figure this out, but this is exactly what I was fearing. This is exactly.
Yeah, I think it's pausing the capability of enrolling in FSD. I think you can still buy it, but you won't get it.
Yeah, if I buy a Tesla today, I can't get full self-driving.
Right.
And a week ago, I could have. And this is the type of stuff why I ran for the board, because I feel like they don't manage the optics around these things. I don't think they're managing the regulators right. I think that they need to lobby. This is a pay-to-play government. If you don't pay, they don't play. Look at SBF. I mean, how obvious is it that it's a pay-to-play government? And if you want the NHB to like leave you alone, you got to like help people win elections. And that's
wait. I just want to clarify that. What you're saying is Tesla gets all the regulatory nightmare and the general lack of support from the government, even though recently we've had some things with Biden and Chargers and that. Generally, there doesn't seem to be a lot of pro-Tesla talk, especially from politicians. And then you're comparing them to a straight-up fraud like Sam Bankman-Fried, who had everyone fooled because he was throwing money at all the politicians and he got everything done he wanted.
He had to put up no bail. The bail is a lie. Okay. His parents' house, they don't own. It's owned by Stanford University. Stanford professors put up $700,000 for bail. He has no bail. He's back at his house, emailing, texting everybody, trying to talk people out of testifying, trying to convince people he didn't steal money. He's doing Twitter spaces. He's doing, and I'm like, when have I ever heard of this guy? Where have I ever heard a guy steals billions of dollars and somehow it's like nothing happened? Well, he's got his two best friends who are rats, and they've ratted him out. So they just tacked on a bunch of more charges against him, but they haven't revoked his bail. They haven't said you have to, you're a flight risk or anything else. He's not a flight risk. Why? Because he knows he's paid enough people that it's like, who knows what's going to happen? But he's paid everybody. And believe it or not, Stanford University is completely helping him. And it's like the university has no shame at all that their professors were actually involved with the fraud. His parents, his dad was like living in the Bahamas in one of the fraud places, advising him during the fraud. Like, how is he even allowed to continue teaching at Stanford, being implicated in one of the biggest frauds in the world? And it's just like, you pay to play. You pay to play. If you pay everybody, nobody seems to want to deal with SBF because whatever they uncover under the onion makes everybody look bad. Okay.
Right. Because he, after all, sent money, in his own words, publicly to Democrats and then through shell entities or other individuals to Republicans. So ultimately, both sides ended up getting paid by him. And he did it in the most optically ideal manner. And so you're suggesting, hey, maybe they pull back the investigation a little bit, or at least slow it down, let it kind of fizzle out. In fact, I think you've got the civil cases paused. All of a sudden, the SEC and Commodity Future Trading Commission announcing they're pausing their investigation while the criminal goes on. Right? Is this all like being done on purpose to kind of let that kind of like take a long time so we distance ourselves from this fraud?
The way I see it is that they're hoping that the public furor will go down over time, and that maybe I don't know, because because his best friends ratted him out, like they have some pretty good evidence, because he turned over emails and they got two people to testify. But I think there's this idea that unlike Elizabeth Holmes, where she got pregnant, tried to pretend like, she's a mom and good person now, you can't send me to jail. And then they sent her to jail. So that was like really great. So I think they think if time goes on and he like helps the fraud out, that there'll be this like lesser desire to send him to jail for 10 years. And since he's a kid and he's running, I'm the smart idiot defense, where it's like, I was really smart and I was able to like steal billions of dollars, but I was actually just an idiot and didn't know what I was doing. It's kind of hard to be both. So he's running the smart idiot defense, where Madoff basically was like, all right, you caught me. It took you long enough, With SBF, because he's not in his 70s, he's like, holy crap, I could spend a lot of time in jail here and it won't be fun. So I got to really like do this. But I've never seen anything like this, where a person, such a huge fraud, can like live with their mom with no bail and tweet and contact witnesses and use apps he's not supposed to use. And the government like seems inept at putting this guy behind bars, which is where he belongs until this trial. Now, that said, there's a lot of people behind bars for doing very little.
Yeah.
Well, God forbid, I hate to say it because our country is so biased, but imagine if he was a different race, would he still be treated the same? And the answer is absurdly not. So it just further exacerbates the huge inequality in our judicial system. And it's an embarrassment, to be honest. But
is this sort of also potentially, I mean, I'd love to hear your take on Andrew Tate apparently being in jail without potentially charges filed against him, at least yet.
Andrew Tate is in jail in Romania.
Right.
Okay. Why is he in Romania? Nobody seems to want to explain this to me. Like, why do people care about Andrew Tate? Okay. I don't know whether he did it or didn't do it, but this guy's in jail in Romania. Okay. There's like a Netflix show, like the worst prisons in the world, and it's like goes to all these random countries. What is Andrew Tate doing in Romania? See, it's not the United States. There's no like due process and judicial system in Romania. You think you should be protected by US rules when you're in Romania? It doesn't work that way. Like, how many stories have you heard of people who like smoke weed who get arrested in like Singapore and end up in jail for like life? You could go to life. You get life in jail in Singapore for drugs.
Well, this was like the the NBA player, the American NBA player who visited Russia and was caught with a little bit of cannabis.
Yeah, and that was political. I mean, they knew she's been smoking cannabis the whole time. It's like, come on. Oh, yeah, it's like, that was all political. I feel bad for her. She got caught up. She was traveling on the wrong day, taking money from the wrong people. That's why you don't work in Russia, because you can end up a pawn. Thank God.
So is your suggestion there that here in America, maybe our legal system is so well or well established that you have more protections, but then you could potentially also be a Sam Bankman-Fried and pay your way to play the game, kind of, pay to play, as you've said. Whereas maybe you go to Romania, it don't work that way. And even though Andrew Tate's got his compound or studio or whatever in Romania, maybe that's not the best place to be.
Is Tate a Romanian name? Is he from Romania? Is he Romanian? Is Andrew Tate Romanian?
I don't know what his heritage is. He might be a
name like that I've ever heard of. So my question is, what is like? So like, if you go live in, I don't know, let's say you go live in Nigeria. Okay, Nigeria is a great country, beautiful place. They speak English. You're doing business in Nigeria. Well, you got to deal with the Nigerian government. Okay, and whether you like it or not, it's not the easiest government to deal with. So if you get on the wrong side of them, you can be in real trouble. Right? So when you go to foreign countries and you do business in foreign countries or whatever you're doing, each country is different. And certain countries have rule of law with real good laws, and other countries do not.
Good point. Yeah, apparently he was born at Walter Reed. And he's
weed. Can we smoke weed? And they're like, no, people don't smoke weed in Singapore because you go to jail for life. Now, that is completely inhumane to me, that you could go to jail for life. for smoking weed in Singapore. But those are the rules and laws of that country. Now, I don't know what the rules and laws in Romania are, but I can't imagine them being that fair.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, after all, okay, so it looks like he was actually born at Walter Reed in Washington, D.C., and he's basically dual citizen UK, US. So, yeah,
So,
I mean, other than
Romania.
owning
Oh,
property in Romania.
why would he have a property in Romania? Is this some lovely place for properties now?
It's a great question. You know, there are some clips out there that suggest, you know, maybe and you know, some people say these are fake, some people say these are real, but some people say they're basically in clips that maybe Andrew Tate wanted to be there because certain laws around potentially exploitation are less
Child
likely to be
exploitation.
punished.
I don't know. I would assume Romania probably has child exploitation laws like most countries. But I think if you're looking for countries where you can manipulate things with cash, many countries it's easier to do, like maybe in Romania. Now, I'm not saying that's true or not, but in the United States, you got to, dole out millions, like SBF was doling out millions to get influence. And a lot of smaller countries, what does 20 grand get you or 50 grand?
Ah, interesting. Okay, so potentially the suggestion that, hey, you know, maybe it's Sam Bankman-Fried
What
had
is
access to billions.
what did
But
this guy do before he was famous for getting arrested?
kickboxer,
Oh
award-winning
yeah, that's right.
kickboxer.
He was like the toxic masculine kickboxer. And so like I see these people like defending him like online, and I'm like, do you even know this person? Like you're defending a kickboxer, American kickboxer who's arrested in Romania for sex trafficking. And I'm like, why? Why are you a fan of this guy?
I guess hopefully the idea would be that the
It's like a
allegations are
Bauer bit,
false and maybe
it's
he's
like
motivating.
he's motivating. What about him is motivating?
His videos. He's got some interesting videos
He's
that inspire
a big
people.
man. That's like the new thing. Toxic masculinity. I'm still a man. I can not be woke. I don't know.
Not a Tate fan. So you're not a Top G fan. Don't free Top G is what you're saying?
I don't care about him at all. I mean, it's like, why would I care about some guy in a Romanian prison when there's real issues here in America with real people who are probably in prison completely wrongfully that we could talk about and maybe help? But, I don't know. We can talk about trains crashing in Ohio too. I mean, that's a bigger deal to me than Andrew Tate, why Norfolk Southern has like nuclear trains going through neighborhoods, that's probably an issue that would be more interesting to discuss than some random.
It's a good point. So how about the Tesla board?
Right.
So I tweeted you about this, and we can talk about the train as well. But before we run out of time, we got to talk about the board of Tesla, because you tweeted just 3 days ago on Friday, just minutes after the market closed.
Yeah.
After careful consideration, I've decided to withdraw my nomination for the Tesla board of directors. As a friendly activist, I feel that shareholders have been heard. Looking forward to what Tesla has to show us next week. $TSLA. I replied to you, and then you ratioed me, but I replied flip-flopping paper hander, because you had announced running for the board, and then after careful consideration, you didn't anymore. And then you ratioed me by replying with, learn from the best flip-flopper I know. So now the best flip-flopper is confronting you on why you flip-flopped.
Yeah. And I think that you flip-flop really well. And I've learned a lot from you, like this whole idea you can't learn from younger people is like, so I kind of have to give you credit for some of this, because, when you ran for governor, I told you it was a bad idea probably, and you would probably lose because it's rigged. And I really respected that you tried. Like, I really respected that. And you spent a lot of time and money to do these things, and you didn't do it just as some like stunt, YouTube stunt, which is like a lot of people do those kind of things. You did want to win, you did have ideas, and you did put together like a real campaign. And I think Gavin Newsom spent a lot of nights worrying about you. Now, I don't know how many nights he worried, but I'm sure there was at least one night he was like, I can't believe this YouTuber guy's going after me. I don't know. I was watching him speak with Elon the other day, and I was thinking about how annoying he is. And I was like, I was happy to support you for governor, but I think I've seen you do this, and I think changing your mind is a healthy thing. Like, I think there's a lot of things we do or we want to do, and they seem like good ideas. And then as you kind of go through the process, there's new information or things you learn in the process that then maybe change the way you view the outcome potentials and desires. And it was hard for me, to change my mind, but I thought about it, and, I have to give my wife a lot of credit because, it's probably one of the biggest reasons I married Jill is she's really smart. And women in my, like my wife, and I think for a lot of men, probably you too, your wife acts as sort of this, like, your better half. I think that's what they call it, right? Your better half, so like, I'll say things to her and she listens because, women they don't forget anything ever that you've ever said. So if you don't know that, women never forget anything you'll ever say. So there's a good to that, and there's a bad to that, so ideally you don't say things in anger to your wife because they don't forget that. But I was talking about my goals in my life and what I'm trying to do. And I was telling my wife some of the issues I was realizing I was going to have to face. And she said, well, how does that fit in with your goals and what you're trying to do? And I was like, that's a very good point. This battle doesn't fit into my goals really. And as much as I want to make Tesla a better company, am I really going to make Tesla a better company by being on the board? And then I realized that I could probably win being on the board. And if I won, what would happen? And then I started thinking about my life being on Tesla's board, because during the entire time of this couple weeks, the Tesla board was in court for Elon on two cases. One was the tweet from 2018. So I was kind of laughing. I'm like, we're still fighting cases from 2018 tweets. And the second was over his compensation package. And I'm watching board members testify for weeks at trials during this process. And I'm like, is this what I want to do? I'm trying to get Tesla to advertise, have better service, have a succession plan, have some sort of sensible stock, sales strategy. But if I'm on the board of directors of Tesla, I'm going to spend half my time in court. I'm going to be dealing with problems. I'm going to be dealing with regulators. I'm going to be dealing with unions, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be in court and dealing with lawyers all the time for Tesla, because that's what they do at the board. That's basically what they do. And so I realized that it wasn't going to be the best way to solve the problems I saw Tesla having. It wasn't going to be beneficial, certainly to my clients, because that was ultimately one of the biggest factors, even though my clients are very supportive of me running for the board. And many of them were like, what? You're not doing this? Because they are angry about the same issues I'm angry about. And I didn't just arbitrarily decide to run for the board for my health. I do represent a lot of Tesla shareholders and a decent amount of stock. And it's like, people are pissed. But I realized, like, hopefully Tesla would, respond to me. So I sent them an email last week, and I was basically like, here's where I stand with these issues. And I really want to, come out to Austin and like talk to you guys about this and solve this without having to be on the board, because being on the board doesn't necessarily solve these problems. And being on the board and fighting with Elon every day about these issues doesn't solve the problem if he's not going to agree to it anyways. And so I would rather just try to solve the problems by talking to management team and Elon. Maybe we can do it next week. And I heard nothing from them for days. So I was like, nah, they just don't want anything to do with me. Okay, that's fine. They're probably sick of me anyways. And then, they called me on Wednesday night and we had a good talk and decided to go out to Austin and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to address some of these issues. And it was kind of like, I'd already kind of decided that I wasn't going to run anyways
Mhm.
before I talked to them. But then after I talked to them, I was like really happy because, you know, I think they care. I think they want to do all these things. I don't think that Tesla doesn't agree with me in any of these issues. I think it's just really hard to get things done because they have so many priorities and so under resourced. And it's mostly
So it sounds like what I'm hearing is, even though you could have been a fantastic voice that actually connects with the Tesla investor base rather than really the silence we hear from the rest of the board, it sounds like you probably would have just gotten sucked into this legal vortex where your goal of actually being maybe a liaison communicator for Tesla would have actually been just ruined by all this new vortex of crap that you would have had to deal with without the guarantee that anything you were actually doing would have had any kind of beneficial impact, because maybe, you know, it's too hard for a board member to get anything done anyway.
Well, and then there's everything I say then has to be scrutinized because I'm on the Tesla board, right? So like being on this show and talking about Tesla strategy, has that been vetted by the lawyers? You know, like, so I spent the last couple of weeks dealing with my lawyers, just dealing with like SEC stuff and like policies and procedures manuals and all this kind of stuff that we have to do. And so like I like my lawyers. So I you know, Michael and, you know, Ben, you know, our team, I like them and they're great lawyers, but I don't really like spending time with them that much. You know, it takes away from what I love to do. And what I love to do is invest and work with my clients. You know, like I love working with clients. I like putting my time into helping people, and I like the stock market and investing. Like that's what I was meant to do. And so every minute that I'm like dealing with policies and procedures, which have to be done when you run a firm, it's not doing what I want to be doing. You know, this whole idea like, do you love your job? And I say, not really. And they're like, what do you mean you don't love what you do? And I go, well, no, I don't love what I do. I love part of what I do a lot, but maybe I got too successful or whatever, because a lot of what I do, I don't like at all, actually, but I have to do it to do the part that I like. Okay. Now I could choose to be less big firm. I could choose not to market and communicate on Twitter. You know, I could choose to do things a lot easier than I do it. But I wanted to build a big company. I wanted to help a lot of people, you know, build their financial plans. And that was my goal and my partner's goal and my team's goal. And so it was like, we got to a point where we're a big company. I have to be CEO and do a lot of roles I don't want to do. So I didn't see how being on the board of Tesla was going to help me get them to care about service more so that people aren't pissed off when they take their cars in. Like I could spend time doing that, but I'd end up also spending time dealing with like, you know, the unions, you know, fighting Tesla to unionize and having to like deal with these like complicated issues that businesses face, and businesses the size of Tesla face massive issues like this full self-driving issue with NHTSA. You know, somebody's got to deal with all that stuff, and it's the board in a lot of ways, you know.
I see. Yeah.
So what
it sounds like you really need a +1.
Well, and I just was like, you know,
for Investor Day.
Right. I wish, you know, as I said, I don't even know what this Investor Day is going to be. And I don't know what they define as an investor, you know, because I don't know if it's, I think what Elon meant by Investor Day is like invested in his beliefs, not necessarily his stock. So the vibe I got was it wasn't really like they were picking people based off how much stock they own. I think it was like they were picking people based off how much they tweet, or I don't know who's going to be there or not be there. I guess I'll see when I get there, or maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. We'll see. But
so what is your take as sort of a last question then, and we'll wrap up here.
If you didn't get an invite, what I was told was that they've never had the demand for something like they've had for this event, that it's literally like multiples of space that of people who want to go versus what they can accommodate.
Yeah.
And it was just like, they feel really bad about that. You know, like I believe it. Like Tesla's super popular globally, and like and that's kind of what Martin was saying. He's like, I'm so sorry I haven't even like really responded to you in emails like he normally does, but he's like, dude, like it's crazy right now. And I'm like, dude, I get it. I totally get it. And so, if you don't go to Investor Day or you didn't get an invite, don't take it personally. I think that, they try really hard to accommodate people in really difficult levels of, stress and time and things. So that said, I'm very curious to see what will be rolled out. I think a lot of it will be ideological, like where Tesla sees itself into the future.
Right.
It'll be interesting. And then hopefully some of it will be practical, like where are we with 4680 production? Where are we with Cybertruck launch and things like that?
Do you think we'll get a new Model 2, smaller car, compact car for China?
I don't think so. I don't know, like, as I said, I do think this is about laying out the vision more than like announcing products, because they tend to announce products on product announcements. And I think the product they really want people focused on is Cybertruck. So I think they might say things about these things conceptually. I don't know if they're going to be like, we're bringing this car to, production in a year, because I don't even know where they would produce it, So like, I do see them announcing potentially this Mexican gigafactory, which would be great news. But I see this very much as like aligning the vision of where Tesla should be in 5 or 10 years and like what it should look like. And that's what I think we'll get. So I think people like to ascribe lots of fantastical ideas to what this will be. I don't know if it's going to be that. So we'll see. What I do know from the invitation and the schedule, and what I do think, is that they are trying to appease some of the issues that I have, and they're trying to roll out who is really running Tesla, who are running these divisions. There will be a considerable amount of time on what they're calling a meet and greet with the different executives at Tesla. So I do think that a lot of the things that I've been talking about, they are listening, and part of this event is to educate people about the succession plan of Tesla, who is really running Tesla, who runs all these divisions. And I think they're going to make a big effort to really showcase the team and the depth of the team and the depth of the businesses within Tesla. And that's what I hope they articulate well. And that's what needs to be done. And that's been one of my issues. So I'm really hoping Investor Day is addressing some of my issues. And then I'm really hoping to hear something about customer service and marketing.
No, that's awesome. It's awesome. Okay. Well, Ross, I think we're knocking on the door of the end here. One of these days you'll have to come with me as we explore for House Hack. And any final comments you want to throw in here?
Well, you know how I feel about real estate.
You love it.
I love it. I love looking for houses. So much fun. No, going back to where we started, I think if you listen to Warren Buffett, we can worry about all these issues in America, the deficit. We talked about Powell. We talked about all these things, politics. But in the end, you buy good businesses and you invest in good businesses and you hold them for the long term. And the most important piece of advice is if you live to 90 like Warren Buffett and you invest from the time you're a kid in your 20s, you're going to do really well. And it's crucially important for investors to understand this is a long-term process, to find great companies or great ETFs like ours and invest in these businesses for the long term. And what you really build wealth is through saving and investing in the right places, like your retirement account, your 401k plan and such. And, try not to put too much in taxes, avoiding things like getting divorced or having a kid when you're 18, things that really hurt your financial well-being. But in the end, you want to invest in America for the long term. And these period of time, they'll pass. Powell will end raising rates this year. We know that. Whether he ends at 5% or 5.5%, it's not going to really make a difference in the end. What matters is finding great businesses, invest in them for reasonable valuations, and hold them for the long term. And that's what we do at my firm. And that's what I think you've been preaching with what you do and investing in real estate and in equities for the long term, and own high quality investments. And you'll reach all your financial goals if you do this for the long term. And so I think in times like this, it's really hard to get sometimes it's easy to get like knocked off track and it's hard to stay focused, but it's the time to be accumulating assets. And, you know, I was teaching my kids Monopoly last night and they were arguing whether they should buy this property or not buy the property. And I said, why wouldn't you buy the property? You know, and they're like, dad's philosophy is buy every property he lands on. And I go, yes, you just figured out Monopoly. And they were like, really? And I was like, yeah, why wouldn't you own the properties? You got to roll around the game every time. Like, don't you want to land on my property? I want to own the properties. Okay. That's the game. And they were like, oh, because they were like thinking out, should I buy this property or not buy this property? You know, and I was like, well, Mediterranean Avenue isn't Park Place, but still it might be cheaper, but they pay rent too, you know?
Yeah. So you got to live somewhere, you know?
Got to own assets. Taught my kids last night. Write that down. All you watchers, you got to own assets, own them for the long term, real estate, stocks, bonds, save your money, do it tax efficiently, and you'll reach your financial goals. It's not much more than that.
That's awesome. Well, Ross, thanks for being here. Remember, you can go to gerberkawasaki.com, a link down below as well, and check out Ross's ETF, ticker GK. Any final thing left that you want to throw in there? Final pitch?
Well, you know, I've been waiting. I wanted to ask how your PP was doing because I've been waiting all day to say it.
You know, we're doing fantastic. Private planes back up in the air, doing great.
No, I, you know, thanks for having me on, and I always enjoy it. And we've got to hang out soon again, you know, when I get back in town. And then, you know, we've been talking about doing a live show with both of us and doing financial planning and doing investing. I think this is a great idea. Hopefully people might like this idea too, but I think we should do a live show in a theater with real people and like real Q&A and not just do this virtual version of us, but we got to keep working on that. Maybe we'll do something in April.
Absolutely. Next time we meet in person, I'll be sure to show you my PP.
I've been looking at your PP online and that's enough for me. Okay. I track your PP. I do. I want to see what's going on. Well, I saw you added, you know, ASML or something. You don't have a lot of stock. So when you add one, it's got to be a big deal, I guess.
There you go. All right, Ross. Thank you so much for coming, man. And I look forward to seeing you in person. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Make sure to share the video if you found it helpful, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.